Hi, and welcome to Just Another View. Today I'm going to have a rant about COVID deaths in the UK, but I'm going to focus on the COVID deaths in England. I came across this data, which basically is this is a breakdown of the COVID deaths in England by age, and I think seeing all this is quite astonishing. Quite astonishing. To start with, what we got here, we have about 71,000 deaths in the UK right now. And in England, we have about 48,000, sadly, 48,000 deaths from COVID. Okay, so looking at this data, between April 2nd and December 23rd, 2020, in England, we've had 48,000 COVID deaths. And out of those 48,000, 4% of those deaths were with no pre-existing conditions. So in a nutshell, 96% of those deaths were all with pre-conditions. I bet you a lot of people did not know that. We're talking about almost 46,000 out of 48,000 all had pre-existing conditions. And the other bit I want to pick out of this as well is the under 60s. The under 60s, this is the total numbers. The under 60s, out of the 48,000 people that have died, the total under 60s, i.e., the working class, i.e., the non pensioners, they made up 7% of the total deaths. So from the 48,000 people, age under 60 made up 7%. So out of the 48,000 people, under 60s made up 3,600. And then out of the total 3,600 that died, 90% of that, 90% of that was pre-existing conditions. 90%. What does that tell you? This information is not broadcast anywhere. It's not focused on anywhere. The fact that under 60s make up 7% of the total. To me, that's quite astonishing, to be honest. So just to summarize this. So out of the 48,000 that died, under 60s with no pre-existing conditions made up 388. And I'll just summarize that to 400. So 400 under 60s with no pre-existing conditions are part of the 48,000 COVID deaths. 400 under 1%, and we're all on lockdown. So between 60 and 79, 5% with no preconditions. Over 80s, 3%. 3% with no preconditions. Irrespective, well, I'm not surprised by these numbers because I kind of knew about this from day one. The rates on here, these are the rates that have been from the CDC from very, very, very way back. There was data on the fact that it affects the elderly over 70s and those with pre-existing conditions. The very first cases that happened in Italy, same thing. They found that out. The young ones that died was all from pre-existing conditions. So it's always been this way. And the elderly. But like I said, we don't hear that focus anywhere in the media or from the experts. But I'll tell you this much, I still question these numbers anyway. This just tells us number of COVID deaths, okay? There's one information we do not actually know, we still need to know. This says COVID deaths, but the question to ask is, did the people die with COVID or did they die from COVID? That's a big distinction because there's a difference there. If they died with COVID, it means they died and they also tested positive for COVID. So COVID was not the reason why they died. If they died from COVID, then that's strictly purely from COVID. That's the number that should matter. Because all you hear about is the cases. The cases are rising, record. But what they did not say is that 99.5% of those cases will be mild. So I guess the question here is these numbers, this breakdown, this data, From my point of view, anyway, the issue is the fact that this data is nowhere in the mainstream. This data is not being highlighted because it's quite hopeful, I guess, because it shows what it shows. It shows exactly what the deal is and what people are saying, and they just ignore it like it doesn't matter. It matters because we're all in this together. And the best way to get out of this is to speak truth to every single information that has been fed to us. They feed us part of the information, not the rest of it, because I think this is quite key, and I'm sure a lot of people don't even realize this. They just put everyone into fear, but they put everyone in the same box and treated everyone the same. Even according to this, under 60s, i.e. the working class, make up 7% of the deaths. 7. Not 17 or 70, 7. And we're all on lockdown. There's a lot to be said about information we are actually receiving. All the talk every day, everything they're going about, nothing positive, nothing hopeful, nothing actually complete. It's incomplete information. Because this should be highlighted all the time as well. It's just a fact, isn't it? Why is it not available? You ask the question, why are they not talking about this? Why are they talking about the other side? Why are they not talking about this? Because this is quite significant, I think. These people, this group, they've given up, and they are still giving up so much. In every way. Physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, and yes, socially. The nightlife is these people just socializing. That's what they do. That's just life. This under 60s, that's the core of society. Well, that's the group that is least affected, and that's the group that is being put under lockdown. That's the group that's giving up their jobs, giving up their livelihood for the over 80s with pre-existing conditions. There's something doesn't add up with the reaction to this. Something doesn't add up with the fact that these are the real numbers, and the reaction on TV with the media, the reaction and this, they don't tally. Someone is not right. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, and on that note, my advice is don't be fearful. Just be careful. Be safe.